Gurmagus, Chair, and I want to thank all of the witnesses again for sharing with us today and helping us and inform our deliberations on this legislation. I suppose I want to come back to David Dodd, and I'd like him to finish what he was saying in reply to Mary Carney.
Thank you. David, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm grateful to you for that. And yeah, sorry, just to say that the pressing problem for the survivors, investors, certainly the ones I represent, is the idea that the apartment block will go on top of the children's burial ground. Now, one of the things we disagreed with in terms of the Commission findings, the Commission, any Commission, if it gets 7 out of 10 things right, it's done well. If it's got 8 things out of 10 right, it's done well. And if it gets 9 things out of 10 right, it's done exceptionally well. But Commissions don't get everything right. And when it comes to the location of the children's burial ground, we believe that the Commission didn't get it right. And we have good reason for that, rational reason. It's because that the OSI holds a map which is available for inspection, which identifies that Mr. O'Rourke was out there in 1949, and he writes down in very deliberate writing children's burial ground. And that goes on to then the printed maps which are around the libraries. To get onto the printed map, the nuns have to sign off on the location. Now, we invited the Commission to speak to the OSI, to inspect the map, but unfortunately, the time allowed, they didn't do that. So from our perspective, there are 900 children missing, and there's a document from 1949 by an expert mapper by the state's mapping agency saying this is where the children's burial ground is. So for us, that's really compelling evidence, unless you say he got it wrong, which he didn't. Everything else in the map is absolutely perfect. So for us, the location is known. Now, in terms of compulsory purchase, we're in favour of the developer developing the lands. Houses are good for people, but just not where the children's burial ground is. And there are ways and means in which both things can be accommodated. We're not against development necessarily. You can memorialise an appropriately respected burial ground, and it's not brain science. You ring fence it so animals don't get on it, and you put up an appropriate memorial and you allow the relatives visit there at reasonable visitation rights. That's what we all get for our deceased, and that's what the ladies of Bessborough want for their deceased. Nothing more, nothing less. So I hope that answers both Ms. Fitzpatrick's question and also Ms. Cairns' issue.
It does. Thank you, David. And can I just also ask you, and I heard you very succinctly talk about the very modest, desire of the women to be able to visit and spend time, and something that really should be so nobody should have to ask. Or have to even countenance being refused or denied. So it's that's what actually makes it so important. I think that that request is fulfilled, and I think I would like, if possible, for yourself and for Martin, just to, because one of the requirements is that in doing our work and as we go forward and complete this piece of work, the work will continue for many years after we've all gone on. But what I think is really important is to hear how you would suggest is the best way to conduct communications going forward with the women and the survivors. Because clearly communications, or lack of communications, or very poor communications, have been a real characteristic of what has gone on in the past.
I'm not sure, Senator, do you want to allow Mr. Martin to answer that? I don't want to necessarily jump in and assume you want me to answer that.
Well, if you can both answer, it would be great.
I'll have to go first, or Mr. Martin might go first if he wishes.
Well, one thing we do believe is that survivors should be included in any plans going forward. The survivor groups, there has actually been a terrible lack of communication between the authorities and the survivor groups. There's been deliberate lack of information from certain quarters. But no, survivor groups should be consulted on any issues regarding adoption, the burials, the mother and baby homes. Without a doubt, yeah, should be included.
Okay, thank you. You have a few seconds left on the slot, Senator.
Does David want to give a view?
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator. The issue is actually quite complex and difficult. Many of the survivors are vulnerable. They have their own issues around communication, and therefore we have representatives like me from the bar or others, academics, representing them. So it can be that their voices get lost, and we just have to keep coming back to listening to what they have to say. And we have to realise they don't all believe the same things, they don't want the same things, and there is complexities there we just have to acknowledge, and we just have to do our best to create a space for them to have their voices heard, just like today, which I think is probably very much to the credit of this committee's hearing today, because to explain the chain reaction of hosting this today is that we have been able to assemble that group. We spent 2 hours with them on a Zoom call ourselves, listening to all of the views and allowing people space to speak. So although it comes to fruition here today, there's a whole iceberg below in terms of allowing people get their views across. And when you speak for others, you only ever do it inadequately, but we do our best to speak for the survivors, acknowledging that there are different viewpoints and each viewpoint is valid.
Okay, thank you.